I'm Rob.
I'm John.
And this is the Mint One Podcast,
where we talk all things NFTs and the rise of blockchain gaming.
So, the SEC has another bee in its bonnet about Web3.
It does, and it set its sights on Binance. Let's dive into it.
Okay, before we get started, we would love you to like, subscribe, follow us, comment, 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on Twitter if you want. Jump in our Discords, talk about it, all of that good stuff. It helps us know that you're enjoying this. And it's great to see the stats we've been seeing lately with the number of countries we're being listened to from. And I mean, it's great stuff. And it really helps us if you let us know you're enjoying it in any way you want to. Okay, with no further ado, let's discuss the absolute disaster case that is the SEC, and it's mainly Binance, but it is also Coinbase that's dragged into this. There's two suits that they're kind of putting out together, which is essentially the same thing, but Binance has a lot more in their lawsuit. I was trying to work out, the thing is we only got the complaint so far, so we don't have all the details on what the case is going to contain, but I saw that the difference is, so Coinbase and Binance are both being sued for operating unregistered securities exchanges in the US, but then there's much more to the Binance lawsuit. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, so top level, the SEC has come after Binance, as you said, for unregistered offer and sale of securities. And there's a long laundry list of exactly what they're trying to accuse them of, etc., etc. There's an entire 2-3 page document you can read through if you want to, but vis-a-vis, that's what's going on. Binance's response was along the lines of, we're disappointed because we've been talking to the SEC about this sort of thing for ages.
Yeah.
And we've kind of been blindsided by these charges, and we're unhappy.
Fair enough.
In terms of my thoughts on it, inevitable, probably. I think it was just a matter of time before the SEC or some other governmental organisation in another country decided to go after, for lack of a better term, one of these large companies in the industry. And as you said there, they've gone after Binance and Coinbase, but I think, as Binance allude to in their kind of response or their letter to the community they've written, the SEC has only gone after those because they're the largest players, and it's to set an example and to try and define what's right and what's wrong, what agency can regulate what, and all of this sort of thing. So at the time this happened, which I think at the time of recording was about 4 days ago or so.
Yeah, about that.
It was very much like Binance or the SEC announced that they're filing these charges. Binance confirmed that they'd received them and that they were disappointed and they want to protect the crypto industry, blah, blah, blah. But on the face of it, nothing much had happened other than some movement in the markets. I believe today, or within the last 24 hours of recording this, Binance US halted dollar deposits. So that's been the first tangible thing that's changed out of this news.
Yeah.
And it's worrying. It's worrying for a lot of people in the crypto space. A lot of the people watching this are, on the Wax blockchain. And it's become harder and harder for US customers to obtain Wax in particular in the last kind of 6-12 months or so, as just all this regulatory stress is around. People and exchanges don't know what they can and cannot do, and many people would rather be safe than sorry. So, yeah, it's a tough situation. Rob, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to it. So, one side, it is bad. The SEC have made it plainly clear that they are coming for crypto, particularly the exchanges, and we'll get on to more of their smear campaign perhaps a little bit later, but they're really they're out for blood.
Yeah.
On the other side of things, the markets didn't really react much to it. And I saw a lot of the financial analysts saying there's only so many times the market can react to the same story, even if it's a rumor. Buy the rumor, sell the news. We've had this rumor for God knows how long, like months, if not years. So nothing really happened there. And I've also seen a lot of analysts say that if the US were to take a really hard anti-crypto stance in terms of regulation, it won't really, it would impact Web3 and crypto as a whole, but it's not, we're at a point now where it can't topple it. All it would do is drive people out of the US to work in that sector. I think they've probably missed, there was maybe a window where they could have crushed crypto into non-existence. Maybe. I don't know if that's true or not. But now it's just too big. And one thing you said there was Binance was disappointed that the SEC is suing them because they've been meeting with Binance they've been meeting with the SEC over regulations and guidance. Coinbase said the exact same thing. Coinbase uploaded a rather spicy video with just some like stats and stuff, and they said that they had met with the SEC 30 times in 2022 asking for guidance surrounding whether it's a security or not, and now they're being sued. So it feels, I think the SEC has not won a lot of fans. I imagine most people are just entrenched one side or the other. Either they don't like crypto or they do like crypto, and this hasn't changed anything for either of them. But the SEC, the way they're playing this, does feel a little bit dirty, a little bit unprofessional, I guess, is the only way I could really describe it. And I think there's no better way of exemplifying this. Now, before I say this, I don't know for sure that this is true, but it's from multiple sources. I just don't have access to the files that would prove it. But basically, did you see the quote the SEC tweeted a few days ago?
I did not. No.
It is mental. I mean, they are acting like a TikTok influencer. It's insane. They tweeted a picture of a quote, and the quote is, we can put the tweet in the show notes. The tweet is, it's a quote from the Binance Chief Compliance Officer from 2018, and the quote is, "We are operating as a fucking unlicensed securities exchange in the USA, bro." Right. So, I mean, right, that's damning. Mental that the SEC would tweet that. That seems like they're really getting in the mud. But it's crazy that they'd tweet that. But that is a very damning tweet.
Yes.
So multiple people started digging into this. It came from internal chats at Binance. And they found that the person who said that pretending to be the SEC in a conversation. So they weren't even saying it as themselves. They were saying it pretending to be the SEC. And the SEC is taking it fully out of context and then tweeted it on this big red background. I mean, it's just insane. And this is what I mean by it feels as if the SEC is doing a PR campaign against crypto, which... They're a regulatory body that I just feel like that wouldn't happen in the UK and in a lot of countries. There's so much theatre around it, isn't it? Do you find it weird, or is it just me?
Yeah, I don't want to get too conspiratorial, but of course the US for the longest time has been, the financial hub of the world, and
of course.
That's been because of fiat money, and they see this kind of new innovation of, I don't know whether you want to call it digital money or let's just call it cryptocurrency, comes into the world, and it's something that they don't necessarily have too much sway or control over, and they might see it as a threat to their, dominance of the financial world, and that might be something they wish to target. I can understand it from that point of view, but yeah, some of the things the SEC has been doing are very strange. I will say, though, that the charges they filed against Binance have some interesting claims in there. So let's kind of dive into some particular bits of this statement. So the SEC, of course, is alleging that they did unregulated offer and sale of securities. That's the main point. But some following points here. The SEC alleges that whilst Changpeng Zhao and Binance publicly claimed that US customers were restricted from transacting on Binance.com, which is the world the version that's available to everyone not in the US, they secretly allowed high-value US customers to continue trading on that platform.
Yeah.
And the SEC is alleging that whilst Zhao and Binance publicly claimed that Binance US was created as a separate, independent platform, that Zhao and Binance secretly controlled the platform's operations behind the scenes. They also allege that the Zhao and Binance were mingling customer assets with other assets involved in the Sigma chain, which is an entity that Zhao controls, which is an awfully similar accusation to what actually happened with FTX.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say.
And of course, whether or not that's happening, nobody knows. I mean, it's an accusation. I can't say whether it's true or false. But it seems strange that they're like, FTX did this bad thing. Let's say that Binance are doing the same. I mean, I don't know if it's just pulled out of thin air or if they have any evidence. It would seem very strange to me that the SEC would come out with something so pointed without any sort of evidence. But going back to the tweet that you just mentioned, if they're screenshotting out of context quotes and putting them on their own Twitter feed, it's not a huge stretch to think that they're also doing some other kind of shady things as well. There's some very lengthy quotes in this statement from the SEC as well, where they're saying that they're alleging that Zhao and Binance not only knew the rules but consciously chose to evade them, which flies in the face of what Binance is saying, where they're saying, look, we went to you repeatedly asking you what the regulations are we doing anything illegal, are we above board, etc., and supposedly were met with silence for the most part. So it's a lot of he said, she said at the moment, and it's difficult to find kind of the facts at the moment. I don't think enough time has passed yet. Yeah,
we only have a complaint. We don't have the full document that they will bring to court. Presumably, I imagine that will be public record, so we will get access to that kind of stuff. So I had the exact same reaction as you when I saw mingling funds. I was like, oh God, it's FTX all over again. And of course there are echoes of that. And then I got a bit conspiratorial and thought, have they done that on purpose? Have they maybe just thrown that in there? I imagine they have some evidence for it, but have they just thrown that in there so that people draw that parallel with FTX, and it kind of puts Binance on the back foot from the get-go? Because you're naturally just going, oh God, are they lending money from one to the other, and are they misusing client funds? It's hard to make a judgment call. It seems unlikely, but then if you think about FTX, I would have sworn to you that FTX is one of the good guys before they collapsed, and SBF was. I mean, we're talking about CZ speaking to the SEC and speaking I think he spoke in Congress. I mean, SPF did that. Let's not forget,
yes.
SPF was lobbying. Yeah. He was involved in that, and now he's going to prison. So it's very hard to I heard someone say the other day, I think it was NLW, said that the fog of war is very thick at the moment, and we can't really figure out where anything is or what anything's doing.
Sure.
It does feel that way, and particularly, I think if the SEC was just being like clinical and clean and direct and professional, I would say, well, this is perhaps very bad, but
yes,
there seems to be an agenda which is stopping crypto in the US, and then we obviously have to talk about Gary Gensler, who
yes.
I mean, the things coming out about him, this is great. So Gary Gensler is kind of heading the charge for the SEC on this front. And the amount of stuff that has come out about him in the last, 72 hours is blowing my mind. So there's the allegation, which apparently can be backed up, but no one's backed it up publicly yet, that Gary Gensler went to Binance/CZ to be an advisor to Binance in 2019. 2019, 2020. He wanted to be an advisor to them, and he wanted to be an informal advisor. And then he has later sworn he's never been an advisor in any role, whether that's true or not, who knows. But the rumor is that Binance are going to ask for him to recuse himself because of these. And he has ties with CZ. He met him in Japan, I think, to meet about Binance, and they're in contact, and apparently they shared some testimony that there's a lot of stuff there. It's not just two people from opposite sides of the world. That there's definitely some overlap. And then I don't know if you've seen this, but on one of the SEC tweets, the most liked reply is a video of Gary Gensler. I'm going to put this in inverted commas for anyone that's listening and not watching. Shilling Algorand in 2019. I wouldn't say it's shilling, but he's talking positively about Algorand publicly on stage in 2019. And now basically everything he does, every video he uploads is it's full of hucksters and scam artists and Ponzi scam. I mean, you've probably seen that video of him saying all this stuff.
Yeah,
he represents one of the I think he represents one of the biggest vulnerabilities for the SEC, which is kind of ironic given his role there.
He's the chair.
Yeah, exactly. But it feels like I think this is what annoys me. They're not trying to regulate. It feels like they're trying to ban, but using the word regulate. It doesn't feel like they're trying to come up with regulations at all.
Yeah, so in the charges that they've put against Binance, there's a lot of, hey, you're doing unregistered this, unregistered that, you're lying to your investors. Oh, sorry, not lying, misleading your investors. You failed to, and this is taken out of context. This is a very interesting line. Failure to restrict US investors from accessing Binance.com. As if when they typed it in their URL box, it was like, no, this doesn't exist, which obviously can't be the case. But yeah, there's a lot of serious accusations in there, and as you said, I'm sure this will either play out in court or there'll be some. And I'm almost certain the SEC are talking with Binance's lawyers right now and trying to figure out a way through this. Well, it depends how much the SEC wants to regulate the crypto space. So if they really want a strong position, then they could take Binance all the way to court and try to get a judgment. But it's bizarre. I was just reading through the SEC's filings here, and they actually include that quote from the Binance's chief compliance officer in the filing, which is crazy. Again, you wouldn't get that anywhere else.
No, that is crazy, but I do want to caveat that although multiple sources have said that has come from internal communications and has been taken not only out of context, but in the opposite context of what it says, there is no evidence of that yet. Nothing's public, so it's hard to say. But it's a ridiculous quote to put in a legal document.
Yeah, so if this was any other legal document, they'd say something along the lines of, we've seen internal communication which confirms that members of the team believe that they were flaunting regulations. But they've word for word, and I'll just say the second half of this paragraph, the complaint alleges that in reality, Zhao and Binance maintained substantial involvement and control of the US entity, and that behind the scenes, Zhao directed Binance to allow and conceal many high-value US customers' continued access to Binance.com. In one instance, the Binance chief compliance officer messaged a colleague that, quote, "We are operating as a fucking unlicensed securities exchange in the USA, bro," end quote. Then they move on to the next paragraph.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to add the before and the after of those sentences. It's strange.
It goes on to accuse them of basically market making with through Sigma Chain, and then they list who's leading the litigation, all this stuff. But yeah, it's a strange situation, and it's not affected the crypto market all too much. I mean, I saw Bitcoin and ETH and a couple of other coins go down 3 to 4%, but nothing like the collapse of FTX earlier in the year. Earlier in the year, late last year.
Last year, yeah.
God, I've got the time
crypto time, man. Crypto.
Yeah, it's crazy. But on the face of it, market-wise, it's not made many differences. But I know from working on the side of the marketplaces and speaking to people working at chains and with other companies in the space, it has a lot of people very concerned. Because if the SEC in the US are prepared to go after Binance, then what's to stop them going after other firms in the US? Or, what if regulatory bodies in the UK or the EU start looking at large exchanges and marketplaces in other parts of the world and thinking, oh, we're a bit concerned about what you're doing too, so we're going to come after you and see if we can get a kind of a regulatory leg up in the space. So
I saw someone saying, I can't remember word for word what they said, but they were analysing what the SEC is doing to stop crypto rather than regulate it. And they said there's an interesting point around them not going after the issuers of the token, because they are issuing unregistered securities to people in the US. But allegedly, they're not going after them because they don't think they can win, or that it would be an extremely difficult case to prove. And obviously, when it comes to things like Bitcoin, I mean, I don't even know who do you go after. I don't really know how that would play out. But then some of the other tokens they are in for and that they've listed, you could go after them. Polygon's in there. There's plenty of people they could go after. Obviously, Ethereum. And I hadn't really thought of it that way. But it's interesting that they're not going after the issuers yet. I mean, maybe they will. But from what it sounded, the person who was talking about this, I believe, had a legal background and was suggesting that it would be tremendously difficult. Actually, on this note, Coinbase's spicy video, which you really should watch, it's very, very short and very, very funny. It's just text, but it's very funny. They said a few things. Like they said they'd met with the SEC 30 times in 2022. They said they reject something like 90 plus different types of digital assets because they don't meet the legal threshold. They're not just accepting anything. Then they said 33 countries are establishing comprehensive rules for crypto. America has 0. And then Coinbase estimated that over 1 million jobs will be pushed offshore if the SEC gets its way. But the most interesting thing in this video is that there is a test that was written to determine if tokens are securities, which is what the SEC is using for these tokens. This test was written in 1946.
Right, okay.
So basically, the premise of this video is we've got to update the system. That feels like a very fair counterpoint. Like, I'm trying to be objective here. Obviously, I lean towards Web3, but I'm trying to be objective. That if that's true, that the test of what's a security and what isn't was written in 1946, some time before any form of digital asset could have existed, really, then it does feel like that is an outdated test and maybe an outdated system. But it could be just a point that's, a cheaper point than that.
I think most countries' regulations are horrifically behind the times, but the US in particular, let's not get into the whole constitution and US politics side of that because we could literally be here all day. But countries around the world are having to update their legislation and their regulations to try and command some sort of control. Maybe isn't the right word here, but to put some protections in place for end users when it comes to crypto and NFTs, and
which is what we want. I mean, how many times?
Which is definitely what we want. Some countries are coming into it with more of an open mind, and I think let's look at El Salvador for an example. They were the first country to basically make Bitcoin. Was it legal tender they made Bitcoin, or was it just the ability to buy and sell? But anyway,
it's an official currency of El Salvador, I believe.
So in a country such as El Salvador, there's a benefit to them of doing that. It's a chance for them to get ahead in a way. It's a calculated risk you can take. It's like, we can take a punt on this, but hey, if Bitcoin turns out to be the next US dollar and we were the first people to adopt it, then that gives us a head start above everybody else. Whereas I imagine the US is looking at it in the opposite situation. It's like, hey, we've got the US dollar, which is, the world's leading currency. It might not be for too much longer looking at financial news, but let's not get into that. But they're in a position where they have this very strong, powerful currency, and they're seeing this new threat to that. And it's in their best interests to try and control that new money as much as they can, kind of under the veil of protecting investors, which is what they've gone after here, which is ironic since a lot of Binance's reply is effectively, it's clear you don't care about the investors whatsoever. You're just trying to regulate the space. So to me, and this might be a very odd comparison, but it reminds me a lot of Prohibition.
Okay.
It's like
unpack that.
The US sees this thing as a threat, and rather than put in particular laws or particular regulations or try to work with companies and the general public to create something that's good for all, it's just nope, ban this. We control this now. And I don't think that approach is going to work. I think it's because it's
Who
not.
knows, I guess.
This sounds like a very dumb thing to say, but the internet isn't something physical. Like you can't.
Yep.
You can't really regulate online activity in a way. It is like how, for example, let's say the American government was like, we're going to ban Bitcoin and make it illegal to own Bitcoin and illegal to buy and sell and trade. How do you enforce that? Do you shut down
it'd be difficult.
every single marketplace, get rid of every single wallet? Do you, even if you went to the stage where it's like, oh, we require everyone who owns a Bitcoin wallet to KYC, so we can track that you're not buying and selling or trading. People can find ways around that. It's the internet. People can find a way around everything.
I think that's a good point.
It's tricky.
That's a good point in itself. That I mean, I don't want to talk about this subject, but if you look at certain types of material that is illegal and shouldn't be consumed by anyone online, I know in the UK that there is so many instances of it that the police haven't possibly got the manpower to prosecute even 10% of what they could probably prove. There's been there's documentaries on this, and it's horrifying how easy it is for people to get around these things.
Well, just to make it a bit more PG, there's plenty of countries in the world where pornography is banned, and to get around that, you turn on a VPN.
NordVPN, and away you go.
and then you've got around, and I'm sure if
we're not sponsored by Nord. Other VPNs are available.
I don't even use Nord. I use something else, but let's they're not going to sponsor this podcast, so let's leave that
Nord
there.
might.
Well, I don't know if they're listening. If someone who knows Nord is listening, reach out to us. I might switch my VPN provider. But anyway, yeah, if the US went down the same route of like, we want to ban cryptocurrencies or heavily regulate them, like I said, people are going to find ways around it. It's you can't really, and as Binance include in their response, they say that Binance US is the US company, but Binance.com is, I'm not sure where it's based, but it's not US based, so the SEC has limited reach. And this is the thing, you can't really regulate an online industry. It either exists online or it doesn't. If it's a website, it's going to be available to everyone on the internet one way or another, whether that's through a VPN or through some other method. If it's online, people around the world can access it. So I don't know where we go from here, and I don't know what the SEC's end goal is.
No.
Of course, we've talked about vague ideas of control and regulation, but in my mind, there's two ways this will go. Either the SEC takes Binance to court and tries to enforce some strict regulations on the industry, or they come to some sort of settlement with Binance and Binance continues to operate. I think if we were to lose Binance, that would be big. And of course, when I say lose Binance, it looks like Binance US is the only one that's really going to be strongly affected right now. But if let's say we were to lose Binance entirely, then that's two of the biggest exchanges in the past 12 months. And it just shakes the confidence of the industry. These people, other people who own exchanges or investors looking into the space, well, why would I want to put any money into this if the SEC or other regulatory bodies are just going to come in and prohibit it 6 months after I put my money in? It harms everyone, from the people that stare at graphs all day to the casual investors to people who just like cat and monkey pictures to people playing blockchain games. It's in one way or another it affects space, and at the end of the day we just want clarity.
Good segue into some of the tokens that are being targeted. Some of the coins are gaming related. The Decentraland's Mana is listed in this lawsuit. Axie Infinity's AXS, yep. The Sandbox's Sand, and then Matic, Polygon's token. So this will impact blockchain gaming, which is obviously an important part of the space for us. Yep. And yeah, the thing is, it bleeds out, doesn't it? And although it starts as cryptocurrencies and people think Bitcoin and Ethereum, it then trickles down to, Mana, Sand, Matic, and then that affects everything. So, yeah, I want to know what their criteria were for picking what tokens they're going to move against, because they picked most of the top 10.
They looked at coin market cap.
I would say that's almost definitely what happened. They picked the top, more or less the top sort of 10, 15, 20. They have mentioned over the last couple of years, they have mentioned 70 different tokens. I'd love to know what we could probably quite easily find this out, but I'd love to know what these different ecosystems, whether they games or entire blockchains, I wonder what they are thinking or what they're feeling about this. Surely it's crossed their mind that the SEC might come for them next as issuers, as we discussed earlier. I wonder if that changes your strategy at all. It just feels, it puts you on kind of unsteady ground, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know for several companies in Web3 it has directly influenced particular things they're offering, particular things that their websites can do, because they're worried about upcoming regulatory pressures. And of course, this kind of move from the SEC seems like the first major one that we've seen play out. And if that's the first one, then many will follow, I'm sure. So yeah, all eyes are on the SEC Binance situation at the moment to see how it all plays out. And fingers crossed, by the end of it, we're in a good place for the industry at large. Whether the SEC backs off or whether we get some good regulation in place that helps us. Let's hope that we end this better than we started it.
I was sort of surveying a few of the more knowledgeable people in this area than we are, legal minds and stuff. And a lot of the suggestions were that essentially Coinbase and Binance will move to have the case dismissed. They will likely not be successful, and then they will settle, which I guess it all hinges on what the settlement includes, but I don't know what ground that gains us if that narrative is to play out. I don't know what that actually does. I mean, if the SEC gets some money out of Binance and Coinbase, okay, cool, but what does that do for the industry? What does that do for regulation? And what does that do for guidance? As all these companies keep saying they want guidance, where's this guidance coming from?
That's probably the worst outcome. If they do it all, if they do it all behind closed doors, and it's all like, we'll just pay you some money to go away, then we're in the same situation we were when we started. Yeah, and nobody's learned anything.
Pointless. I don't. That makes it about money rather than about regulation. And as we say, regulation is important. And whether these companies like Coinbase and Binance are being disingenuous when they look for guidance, I don't think they are. But whether they are or not is kind of irrelevant, because we do need protection for people. We do need to make sure that citizens aren't scammed, and crypto has been a difficult place at times. So we do want these things there. And if all that happens is we see a financial settlement, I just don't know what that gains anyone. It just seems like a net loss. Yeah. There was one more thing I wanted to bring up about this. Is the age of Twitter is amazing, because sometimes the most important people in these cases, like CZ, are writing public documents and giving it to the world in the middle of cases. It's kind of crazy, and it must happen all the time where people say stuff that incriminates them or helps them. He was saying that Binance. It was on CoinDesk. There was an article on CoinDesk by Sam Reynolds, and it said Binance redirected $12 billion to firms controlled by CEO Changpeng Zhao. SEC says billions in customer funds were directed to Zhao's firm Merit Peak via a holding company called Key Vision Development Limited. So CZ, I keep calling him CZ. That's a very British way of saying it. I realise most people call him CZ. CZ tweeted about this article with a screenshot of the article. He tweeted, "This is simply false. Not sure if it's the journalist or the source. To the best of my knowledge, Binance.us had in total roughly $2 billion in user funds. This number in USD equivalent fluctuates as a little as crypto prices change, and declining as users withdraw due to recent news. All user funds are accounted for and never left the Binance US platform unless users withdraw them themselves, of course, ever." He reckons they've got the number wrong by 10 billion. From 10 billion to 12 billion, 2 billion to 12 billion. And also it's just, he is outright denying this publicly, that user funds never left Binance.us. So, which seems, to me, that seems easily provable or disprovable, surely. Because even if it's not on chain, which at least part of it will be, you can follow the money, right? I mean, surely if we even know the holding company and the final destination of the money, surely we can track that. But yeah, we live in such a crazy time that these people that usually would just be names are actual people on social media explaining their side of the story as it's playing out.
Yeah, this...
As SPF did.
Yeah, if you went back 20 years ago, I mean, let's look at the O.J. Simpson case, for example. You know, that didn't play out on Twitter. It played out between lawyers and in court and through statements, and it was very controlled and very sanitary, I guess. You know, every word tweeted. Maybe, but you know, every word, every statement was checked. You know, they made sure that everything was above board and nothing could be said that would implicate anyone of anything. And now, and we tend to see this all the time now, where something happens or some case comes to the fore and social media plays such a massive part in it. But it wasn't that long ago that we had the Johnny Depp and I've forgotten her name. That's not great. But anyway, you know the case I mean, where so much of that case was played out over social media. Not much was said. Amber Heard, that was one.
Sorry, I couldn't continue to remember.
Not much was, not many statements were made on social, apart from, you know, people looking at their Twitter accounts and stuff. But there was so much conversation, so much analysis done by the general public. And more and more, and even in this kind of SEC Binance situation, it's kind of gone a step beyond that already, to the point where, you know, the SEC is publishing screenshots on their Twitter feed and Binance is writing statements, and it's all back and forth to sway public opinion almost.
Yeah,
it's irrelevant at the end of the day, irrelevant to the case. You know,
it's
the case
PR battle.
Yeah, absolutely. The SEC is trying to, you know, make the point, you know, there's this unregulated industry that has all these evil players in it, and we're here to set things straight. And Binance just being like, what are you doing? You know, you're overstepping the mark, you're being overbearing, you're trying to overregulate, etc., etc. So, I mean, it's, as I said, and I'm sure everyone in the industry will keep their eyes very closely on the situation and how it develops. As I said earlier on in the podcast, kind of the first real move seems to have happened now with Binance US halting dollar deposits, and I believe they'll soon halt dollar withdrawals as well.
Right.
After quote from Reuters, after US financial regulators said that they supported freezing Binance's assets. So,
Good Lord.
Yeah, interesting to see how quickly this is developing, and we'll see what the fate of Binance US is. But for people around the world, it'll be harrowing's not the right word here, but it'll be
it could be harrowing.
I mean, it could be harrowing indeed, but it'll be interesting to see how this affects the wider Binance business, and then how exchanges and other companies that hold mass amounts of or facilitate mass amounts of trading and asset holding, etc., buy, purchase, sell, whatever, on their platforms. So
yeah, I think Web3 and crypto could survive Binance just disappearing, but it would certainly be a hit. And yeah, it's a very strange situation, and I'm struggling to see how we end up with a positive conclusion. But
yes,
look, that's all we can hope for. We'll keep an eye on this, and then inevitably in the next year we will do another episode on this topic. Likely when it goes to court, or if it doesn't go to court, we'll discuss what happened and if it made any actual positive change, which I'm sure that's what everyone's meant to want. They want to see the SEC affect positive change in a financial regulatory sense.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like they're shooting for that at the moment, but who knows? Maybe they will. That was a deep and dark episode.
There was a dark episode. Do you want to finish on something a little more upbeat, or it may be upbeat depending on your perspective of it?
Yes. So the only thing I wanted to talk about other than that was the news that really hasn't seen as much publicity as perhaps it ought to, which is Nike and their .swoosh brand, which is their NFT collection. They have signed a partnership with EA Sports for these digital assets to appear in EA Sports games, including FIFA, though I think it's called EA Team, EA Sports Team,
EA
or whatever.
Team FC, whatever they're calling
something
it
like
now.
that. As of next year, and then you got Madden, you got NFL, you got NBA, you got NHL. This is enormous, and one of the first articles I ever wrote on NFTs in games, I cited FIFA using NFTs for like boots and things, which is funny because that's exactly what we're looking at now.
Yeah.
And people have mentioned it. The thing is, a lot of what's being reported hasn't been verified, but there's only a few things that can possibly come out of Nike's NFTs partnering with EA Sports games. I mean, there's how many things can possibly come out of that? And they have said that the assets will be usable in game, allegedly starting with Madden.
Yes.
That is the craziest example and the biggest example of mass adoption of blockchain gaming we have seen and will see for some time, I think. Yes, it's been very quiet. Not many people have been talking about it.
Yeah, I think if you're US based, then of course Madden it's the equivalent of our FIFA. So whether you are a sports fan in the US or in the rest of the world, EA's games have a massive impact in your gaming economies. I know over here in the UK and throughout Europe, FIFA is, I don't know if it still is, but it is annually one of the biggest game releases of the year.
Yeah.
Ultimate Team and the various other cash shop options generate EA Sports an unfathomable amount of money every year. And I'm sure the same is the case in the US with Madden, and I imagine you have some kind of Ultimate Team variant over there as well. So, as you say, they've not said too much about what's going to be a part of this partnership so far. I'll read from Nike's statement here. This is from Ron Farris, the GM of Nike Virtual Studios, and it's pretty much the only part that gives us any insight into what this is all going to be about. But he says, quote, "This partnership will allow us to unlock some incredible new experiences for our .swoosh community and the massive EA Sports fan base. And then Andrea Hoplin from EA Sports and Racing says, quote, working with Swoosh will bring creativity and self-expression to the forefront for fans as they connect, compete, and share their love for sport. What in the hell does that mean? That is the most PR of PR statements. But I mean, we don't know the extent to which NFTs or whatever Nike ends up calling them will play a part in Madden and EA Sports FC and their other sports titles. But as you say, it's a big step forward for mass adoption, because, I mean, if it's in the latest titles, then it's impossible to ignore them in a sense. Yeah. They're there whether players like them or not. And I think with titles such as Madden and EA Sports FC, it kind of solves that kind of mass adoption question of how do we get players to play Web3 games, as we just stuff Web3 tech into games people are going to buy anyway. Then they don't really have a choice. So my only issue with this, or a bit of skepticism, I suppose, is that it's EA. Sure. The biggest heap of money-grabbing arseholes the gaming industry has seen in the last decade. So quite how this will play out and how they will... But I'm sure that they will benefit financially massively through this. But quite how that will play out, we're yet to see. But let's hope that they do stay true to the kind of the ideals of, digital asset ownership and, free trading and all this kind of thing. But who knows? Three
things to say. Let's see if I can remember all three, because I usually remember the first two, finish the second point and forget the third. But let's give it a go. So one, I would say it is going to benefit EA financially, 100%. But the fundamental difference here is that the players will have digital assets, whereas previously players of FIFA, for example, have been buying Ultimate Team packs, and then the new game comes out and they've just... all those things they bought are dead, like just meaningless files on a server that they don't have access to. So even if EA make more money by having a secondary market and taking a percentage of sales and stuff, I still think it's a good thing for the industry and for the players. Two is that this means that EA has the infrastructure in place to implement NFTs in games. And once one of these giants has that infrastructure sorted, I think that overcomes one of the biggest problems we've had, which is the giants were unsure about onboarding and how to do these digital assets in their games and make sure that players own them and have access and don't have to set up keys and all that. I think this would act as the brilliant use case and the first person to overcome. And I remembered all three. The third thing is this is on Polygon, and I'm a big fan of Polygon. So I think it's very cool that we're seeing it on Polygon.
Yeah, it's a big power play for the chain that is onboarding every massive brand at the moment. Starbucks, Reddit, EA,
killing it.
Crazy.
Nike now.
Yeah, Nike. They've got Ticketmaster as well, I believe.
Oh, boo!
Crazy. I'm having to deal with Ticketmaster at the moment to buy tickets for a particular thing that's happening in London in a few months, and it is atrocious, and the fees are horrible.
How many thousands of pounds are you having to spend for a basic ticket to a basic event?
Too much to sit in the rafters right at the back of Wembley Stadium, but oh well.
Okay.
I think
a fairly positive note until Ticketmaster.
Ticketmaster. I don't think you can have a positive conversation about Ticketmaster,
No.
So let's end the podcast on positive notes with a lively, or try to be lively, outro. Rob, where can we find you?
You can find me at tokengamer.io for daily blockchain gaming news, giveaways, reviews, everything surrounding blockchain gaming, NFTs kind of to an extent, as long as they're pertaining to gaming some way, and metaverse projects. We are on YouTube. We're still ramping that back up, but you can find us on Twitter at tokengamernews. We're also on LinkedIn, Token Gamer, and our app is still doing fantastically. That's on Apple and Android. Just type Token Gamer in, and that works for Wax wallets and Polygon wallets. So soon you'll be able to have your NFT Nike boots for FIFA in our app, I think. I mean, this is quite a long way off, but still. Is that everything I can think of? I think that's everything I can think of. John, where can people find you?
Cool. For the latest Web3 news, you can head to nftinsider.io or at nftinsider_io on socials. For me personally, it's at hydropowered, HYDROPWRD on everything. I've not been very active on very many platforms lately, but Twitter is still the best one to catch me on. And whilst I'm talking, go check out Atomic Hub Game Fest happening June the 19th to the 25th. It's at live.atomichub.io/gamefest. It's a week-long celebration of games on the Wax blockchain. There's a $3,000 plus prize pool. It's free to enter for most of the games, I believe. So go check that out. Go get some free participation NFTs and be in with a chance of winning some cool NFT and crypto prizes.
We'll have to do a special episode that week, by the way.
We will.
I should say it should be a lot of fun. I'm doing it right now instead. We should do an Atomic Hub Game Fest episode. Yeah, during the week it's happening. That'll be good fun.
Yeah, it should be good. Looking forward to it. So there we go. Episode 67 of the Mint One podcast is in the books. Thank you very much for watching. If you're on Apple or Spotify, a 5-star podcast review would be awesome. If you're listening on YouTube, comment with what you'd like to see from us next. And be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon so you never miss out on our latest episodes. And if you're on Twitter, be sure to follow us at Mint1Pod for the latest news about our latest episodes and to find out when this goes live. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and we'll see you again next week.